Are you interested in effortlessly growing your Bitcoin portfolio? I sure am. The Bitcoin credit card by Gemini earns you Bitcoin back on every purchase. Use it like any credit card. Buy lunch, gas, or your weekly groceries, and you'll earn up to 4% back instantly in Bitcoin or one of over 50 other cryptos straight to your account. All that with no annual fee, and right now you can grab a $200 Bitcoin welcome bonus. It's the easiest way to start building your Bitcoin stack. Go to Gemini.com/card to learn more. Terms apply. See the link in the description for more information regarding rates and fees.
There's nothing like being in the stands cheering on your favorite team, and the Game Time app gives fans the advantage. Digital cues and prices jumping at checkout can get in the way of you and a great seat. Game Time is your hack to unlocking amazing tickets in just a few taps. It's easy to use, and the Game Time guarantee means you can trust you'll get 100% authentic tickets at the best price. Fees are always included, so what you see is what you pay. You can snag new ticket deals before anyone else by following your favorite teams, or get a panoramic view of the view from your seat, all right from the app. Plus, you can save even more with zone deals by choosing a section and letting Game Time choose the seats. No matter what, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying sports tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app and create an account to start searching for tickets to upcoming games and events. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Game Time.
Hey, warmer friendly hello! Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Eaps Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you. We've got a great two-part chat coming up today with one of our good friends, Rocco Miller. He does an absolutely exceptional job over at Bracketeer.org. He also does some work with Trilly Donovan's Basket Under Review website. I know that he's hard to work with the Field of 68's mid-major show as well. Guy just does a little bit of everything and does so all so well, and we're going to be chatting with him about a wide variety of different things. We have seen 4 coaching moves happen since the middle of September, so we're going to be fleshing out a lot of those, sort of the inside baseball on the Wofford ordeal. What is all happening with Cal State Bakersfield, as that is just absolutely wild and crazy. The expectations for Auburn this season. Then we saw a big piece of news for those of you that are fans of the mid-major ranks, a team that I thought was going to be able to win the OVC this season in Little Rock. They're going to be without KK Robinson, a guy that 2 years ago was putting up 16 points per contest, a former top 150 recruit. He's out for the season, so how does that change around their trajectory as well? We're also going to be asking him about a few mid-major teams that are a little bit under the radar as well. So we've got a really good chat coming up with Rocco. If you do like what you're hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. And if you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of 2 ways we'll fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline, and the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. While I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, everything is powered by EdgeBoost. EdgeBoost is making sure that bettors are able to have access to their funds whenever and wherever. With EdgeBoost, 100% of gambling transactions do get approved, and when you go to EdgeBoost.bet, utilize that promo code of Greg, G-R-E-G. That gets you a $1 for $1 match on your first deposit up to $25. Now let's have that quality chat with Rocco. Again, doing such great work in so many different landscapes, and I know that he helps out a lot of these teams with regards to their non-conference scheduling as well, and that's why he's got such great information. Typically, whenever he joins us, you're able to follow him on the old Twitter/X at his first and last name, Rocco Miller, and the number 8 all together. And Rocco, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Great to be on with you, Greg. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, because typically in late September, when it comes to looking at college basketball, we're trying to do our previews and everything like that, but I think we're being rudely informed that if you try to do your work too early, sometimes you need to redo it, because we've seen 4 coaching changes here in the middle of September, and just what have you made out of all this? First things first, before we flesh out some of the individual things, because this has to be the most wild September in college basketball offseason news I've ever seen.
I agree. I think they're all very different independent reasons for the changes. You know, I think the first one was a surprise from the St. Joe's camp, which we've talked about on previous episodes, where Billy Lang just bolts for the NBA. I think, just outsider opinion, not talking to St. Joe's that often. I have talked to them a few times, a couple of the staff members there. But really, the sense was if he can bring in guys like Fleming and Reynolds over the last couple of years and still only go 500 in the A10, which are harder and harder to recruit, especially if they're upperclassmen with the amount of money you have to be able to afford players like that. Then what does the future really look like with Billy Lang? Plus, he gets to fail upwards to the NBA with a really nice job with the Knicks. So I think for him, he was smart to just kind of make that move, a calculated move, clearly. And then you go to the Auburn situation. Bruce Pearl, I guess in some ways it was surprising, in other ways it wasn't, because he was clearly flirting with a potential political career, first of all, for various reasons. It was just kind of like, all right, well, if he does run for senator, he's teeing this up to give the job to his son, which I think became pretty clear. If you rewind the clock about a year, Greg, and you really wanted to make sure your son got the job, probably the best thing you could do is hold the job yourself until the first day of official practice, which is exactly what happened. And so when you go back and retrace the steps of both Pearls, it makes sense. And the fact that his son got a 5-year deal and has not been a head coach at this level speaks volumes to the master plan coming together for the family. Nothing negative about Bruce Pearl. He had an unbelievable career, deserves to go out on his terms. But we saw a similar situation like a few years ago with Bob McKillop handing the job to Matt McKillop over at Davidson. So that was its own unique deal, and I get it. We'll see how Steven does. Steven's a wizard, a lot like Todd Golden was under Bruce Pearl, doing deep dives and running practices, and a film guru and a defense guru. For all we know, he could be a great coach. So I'm going to give Steven Pearl every opportunity to prove that. Then, of course, we got the situation at Wofford, Greg, where that's been dragging on for weeks. Finally kind of came to an end at the beginning of last week with Kevin Giltner getting hired from Virginia Tech, former Wofford player, great player, up-and-coming coach. So for him to get the Wofford job makes sense, but the way that Dwight Perry and associate head coach Ty Anderson got let go, just very, very petty in like the public perception of a few hundred.
They needed an excuse to get them out.
Right. Just an odd deal in Wofford all around for the national people to understand. You really have to be close to Wofford as a private institution in South Carolina to understand that culture, that world where there's still like people that make big decisions at that institution where they are not okay with NIL or varying elements of NIL. And that goes for, other coaches of other teams at Wofford that don't have the luxury of being able to pay their own players. So it's an odd deal, but it happened, and now Giltner's in, and from all I can tell, he's going to be able to keep his roster. Like, again, it's so late in the offseason and the first practice already started, to the point where you've got to, like, if you're a player on Wofford, right? Like, where are you going to go? Do you want to play Division I basketball? Do you want to play in the SoCon? You might as well stay, because that's your only shot right now, unless somebody from the OVC or something calls. Then you could be the best player there, but you're probably not getting nearly the money. And so, yeah, Wofford's in this odd position to where they can keep this team together, but a lot of these guys did not commit to play for Coach Kevin Giltner, and I just feel like at the first sign of trouble, they could be in a lot of trouble because they're not his guys. So that's a problem. Then we get to the human trafficking and other issues with Cal State Bakersfield assistant coach Kevin Mays, who's facing 11 charges in court, which I know you brought me on to want to really drill into a little bit. Unfortunately for long time, 4-decade long head coach Rod Barnes. He's been at Ole Miss. He's been at Georgia State. Of course, Bakersfield now was going to enter his 15th year. Really sad to see him go out because of this. But at the end of the day, Coach Barnes is responsible for the entire program. That includes his assistant coaches. And so this was just something where the athletic director, it's also an acting athletic director. She got appointed literally 2 days before this Barnes was officially let go. So it's just hard to see Barnes all these years to go out that way. You don't like to see that. You feel bad for all the players who are drug along with nothing to do with any of this stuff, you would assume. It's one of those things too, Greg, where I actually had a tip throughout the summer that Barnes was going to retire at the end of the year. They were going to do a bunch of different things for him throughout the year. Like, I think they do have a game at Ole Miss on the schedule, which was going to be a Barnes tribute game. Now he's not even coaching in that game. So the whole thing's really sad in Bakersfield.
Yeah, I mean, that's the most unique situation of all, because at the very least, it feels like the other three sort of situations have a resolution as we're doing this over the weekend here in the last weekend of September, as Rocco Miller does great work over at bracketeer.org, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And for Bakersfield, who's even going to be the coach for them? How are they going to rearrange a coaching staff? Because with Coach Mays being caught up in this trafficking ordeal, he was obviously one of the main assistants. He's now out, and now you have pretty much to wipe the slate clean of a lot of these coaches, and you have to try to get things together for a Bakersfield team that has always had an identity under Rod Barnes of playing good, tough, tenacious defense, and now they need to bring in a new coach that they might be looking to do something completely different than what they were intending just 2 to 3 weeks ago.
You got to look at the top down to try to answer some of those questions. So like I said, at the beginning of the week of that last week of September, we're here now talking on the weekend, the director of athletics position was appointed to Sarah Tuhi. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. And so Sarah is the acting AD, but she doesn't have the long-term job officially yet. From my understanding, she has a chance to earn that over the next school year, which is just getting underway down in Bakersfield. But with that situation at the top, they've just gone ahead and named Mike Scott, who's longtime assistant, could be a good head coach for all we know, as the acting head coach. And I don't see that changing by the end of the season based on, I don't think we're having another Wofford situation because she's got so much on her plate as an acting AD. She's not working behind the scenes to try to bring somebody else in, unlike the Wofford deal where they actually already kind of had their next coach in mind. I don't think that exists for Bakersfield. So they'll have a year, or maybe not a year, but they'll have 5 months now, maybe 6 months if you include the month of October, to kind of do their homework, figure out I think the questions Bakersfield has to ask is A, Sarah Tuhi, is she going to be the long-term AD? If she's not, who's the new AD? They got to figure that out. Then B, by the time we get to March, you would want to be ahead of the coaching search if you're in a position like Bakersfield. Really the only advantage of having an acting or interim head coach is to start doing those behind the scenes conversations with the agents. I had a meeting last year with the AD at Pacific, and before they brought in Dave Scott, he was actually going to Texas Tech games and watching Dave Scott without him knowing he was there. I'm giving you one example at a similar level where Pacific knew Dave Scott was their guy because that AD at Pacific knew how good of a coach he was and did his own homework by traveling to Texas Tech games. I don't know if Bakersfield can even do that kind of effective hiring practice. There's just chaos in both the basketball program now and the athletic department at large. It really just depends. Cal State Bakersfield as well, always been kind of a lower resource program, a little similar to UC Riverside in that way, to where, they're never going to be the Fresno State level of the Cal State system. They're probably not even Long Beach State level of money. And so they have to win with less. I think the best thing they could do is what Riverside did. Find an amazing Division II coach that knows how to work and have him bring his guys.
Cal State Northridge, too.
And Cal State Northridge and Cal Poly, right?
Yes.
So all three of them. That's the Big West model now, Greg. So if you're Bakersfield, no matter who the AD is, that's the blueprint. All of those places are lower half of the league in resources. Maybe not Cal Poly, but you get it. Those jobs require somebody that knows how to work hard. So going out and hiring an MBA guy or hiring a high major guy, to me, doesn't make sense anymore for a job like that.
Yep, exactly. And man, that is going to be such an interesting ordeal because you have to anticipate that they're going to need to learn a little bit of a new style. They've got players that are going to need to adjust on the fly, and that's one that I'm very much feeling the most, shall we say, strange about. But the biggest splash one of all of them, and we have not talked to you about this quite yet because this happened after our last conversation, is what happened with Auburn. And we're going to talk with our good friend Rocco on the flip side about this. What were expectations for Auburn prior to the news of Bruce Peal stepping down? Where are they at now? What's the hierarchy of the SEC? And I always have to ask Rocco about some of the mid-major teams that he's feeling bullish upon as well. So that's coming up on the flip side right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Craig Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast.
Are you interested in effortlessly growing your Bitcoin portfolio? I sure am. The Bitcoin credit card by Gemini earns you Bitcoin back on every purchase. Use it like any credit card. Buy lunch, gas, or your weekly groceries, and you'll earn up to 4% back instantly in Bitcoin or one of over 50 other cryptos straight to your account. All that with no annual fee, and right now you can grab a $200 Bitcoin welcome bonus. It's the easiest way to start building your Bitcoin stack. Go to Gemini.com/card to learn more. Terms apply. See the link in the description for more information regarding rates and fees.
And we're back back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops-Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always great to be joined by Rocco Miller. He does an absolutely sensational job over at Bracketeer.org. You want to give him a follow on the old Twitter /X at Rocco Miller, his first and last name, the number 8 altogether. Also does great work with the Field of 68, Trilly Donovan's website, and we're going to be asking him about a lot of mid-majors towards the back half of this conversation, but we do have to address this because last time we chatted, we did not have this piece of information. Now we do about Auburn and the fact that Stephen Pearl, he now takes over for Bruce Pearl as a new head coach. I thought that they were going to be somewhere in the middle of the SEC, which a lot of people might view that as a slight considering that they went to the Final Four last year, but trust me, there's a lot of programs that wish that they were in the middle of the SEC with how competitive that is. But how do you look at them in the hierarchy of things? Because I know that when you take a look at a lot of like the models, what have you, they have schools like Vanderbilt, Ole Miss, in a lot of cases behind Auburn. And those are teams I think might now leapfrog because I think though the margins in the SEC are going to be that thin to where a first-time coach, and I think that Stephen Pearl could be a rock-solid coach, but not having that experience versus a guy like a Chris Beard. Give me Chris Beard versus Stephen Pearl if all other things are equal.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Stephen Pearl is going to have a new learning curve as essentially the CEO of Auburn basketball. If you're a SEC level head coach, you're a CEO at this point. You have somebody on your staff running offense, somebody on your staff running defense. You have player development people. It's an organization now. There's enough money at the SEC level to look at it that way. And so what's Stephen Pearl, I think from everybody I've talked to about him and really close with him, I have a couple close contacts on the Auburn staff, just not Pearl himself. Like he's in a lot of ways earned the right to be a head coach at D1. Now, should he start his career on a team that went to the Final Four last year? Yeah, it's a lofty start for sure. But I think he'll work his butt off. It's just a matter of working smarter, not harder, right? And he's going to have to learn a lot of tricks of the trade of the day-to-day on how to be the most effective Auburn basketball CEO that he can. And that goes for every element of the program, whether it's recruiting, whether it's pregame prep, whether it's in-game adjustments, whether it's handling the media, whether it's keeping the jungle as like one of the best home court advantages in the country. He's responsible for all those things now. So it's a lot more than just coaching and winning, which is obviously what he's ultimately judged on. I do think they have a very stable NIL situation with Keyshawn Hall and Tahad Pettiford being the biggest earners on the team. You still have some really big pieces like Abdul Bashir and Kevin Overton, Philip Jovic, Keyshawn Murphy, etc. As long as that roster is not affected, this is clearly to me a top 25 roster, but also clearly not last year. It's not going to be a team that runs the SEC they ran NCAA basketball last year, Greg, all the way until basically the beginning of March. And then they stubbed their toe with the 2-3 finish at the end of March, but then still good enough to win their regional and get to beat both Michigan and get to the Final Four. So it's a special year. You can't expect that. So I still think they should be expected to be about a 6 through 8 seed, maybe 5 through 8 seed. Is that fair?
Yeah.
I think if they do better than that, everybody will love Pearl. If they do worse than that, they're going to have questions. And if they miss the tournament, the skepticism will start pretty much immediately.
Yep, and that is going to be one of the most interesting jobs in all of college basketball this upcoming season because there's going to be a lot of eyes on Auburn basketball this year. As Rocco Miller, there's always all eyes on him. He always performs up to standard and exceeds it. He's joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, and I know that you and Sean Paul do a great job with the Field of 68's mid-major show, and that is back in our lives. So I do have to ask you about this because it's always fun to be able to pick your brain. We always talk about the teams that you're feeling a little bit more bullish on, the teams that you're feeling more sold on. So I want to give you the floor for the opposite on this one. As you're doing your research, is there maybe a team or two that you were feeling good about towards the beginning part of the offseason that now you're maybe having your question marks on them? And that does exclude Wofford and the coaching changes because those are very, very obvious ones. I think that it's very obvious to feel a little bit worse about Cal State Bakersfield now than you did 2 weeks ago because I had Cal State Bakersfield in the top 5 of my Big West. I don't anymore. But that said, is there a team or two that maybe you were feeling bullish about them a few months ago? Now, maybe not that they're like tumbling down the board, but you just have questions with them.
Yeah, I think I have to start with Little Rock. So it was actually not really reported that well. And I even myself forgot to
Oh, the KK Robinson news. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So I think,
Oh.
yeah, and I actually got a call today from Little Rock, someone on the staff, and that reminded me. So perfect timing, Greg. Thank you. So I have to start there. They were kind of like to me, at least the clear cut most talented team in the league. And KK's brother, I believe it's Corey, also is going to be out with a knee for an extended period. Could be a really long period for all I know. And so they've taken a serious hit, but they still do have three other high major down transfers from previous years. To me, they still remain kind of front of mind for the OVC chase. I am going to probably give the nod to SEMO to be my projected OVC champion. I also think Lindenwood is sneaky good, and I respect the coach at Brian Barone over at SIU Edwardsville. And Little Rock's in that top four still, but it's just man, Little Rock could have played their way into maybe the top 140, 125, something crazy with a full slate of health. But unfortunately, for the second year in a row, KK is gone way too early. He went down last year in December. This year, he'll miss the whole year. So we'll get an even older KK in the year. So hopefully, as long as he makes a full recovery. So I'll start with them only because of the injury. I think the staff ones are easy choices, like you said. Norfolk State's a team. I would not be shocked if they win the MEAC. In fact, I might still pick them to win the conference tournament. But on paper, I just kept drilling into Norfolk over and over again. And I know Coach Jones is going to figure out a way to make it work, but I just am not seeing a ton of talent there. They've been blessed to have like Brian Moore last year and a ton of like really good players. And they're just going to have some surprises this year to get back to that level, to be like a top 150, 175 team. Can see them playing into like the top 250 this year, but there's probably a good, at least from what I can tell, I haven't seen them practice or anything, but there's probably a good 75 to 100 spot step backwards for Norfolk this year. And that leaves things wide open for like a Stan Waterman at Delaware State, or pick your MEAC cup of tea of choice. So we'll see how that league plays out. Could be very interesting. I'm actually going to watch next week. I'll be at the end of the week in the East Coast and watching LIU practice. They're not on this list. In fact, I'm blown away with LIU, but I'm still seeing a lot of people pick Central Connecticut. Yeah, mainly Central Connecticut to win the league. And I just think I've slowed my roll on them. They've got a lot to replace. Sellers is going to do a great job, and I'm thinking they will overperform, baseline expectations from the Ken Palms of the world. But I think this is LIU's year, and it's LIU's league to lose. So I've taken a cool step back on Central Connecticut. I could probably give you a couple more, but how's that for a start?
I think that that's a great start because I'm right there with you. I think that Long Island is going to be able to win that league. And Howard, always a dangerous team as well out there in the MEAC. I'm with you
always.
there.
Always, yeah. I just don't know a lot about Howard's players yet, but I'm excited. There's an opportunity there, and Blakeney, he's got a lot of tricks up his sleeve.
Oh, that man does, and they find a way to be able to get talent. I recognize that it didn't work out with Maker coming in a few years ago, but man, the way that they're able to get in former top 150, top 200 recruits, that's absolutely wild. And the talent that you have, Rocco, it's very much second to none. It's been a wild last few weeks of college basketball. 4 coaching changes happening in the middle of September. Not easy to digest, but you're doing a great job there. You're doing a great job with the Field of 68 show with Sean Paul. You're doing a great job with Basket Under Review. That's Shirley Donovan's website. You're checking all the boxes, my friend. So let the good people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Thank you, Greg. I'll add in one more bonus answer
Perfect.
for you. I'm just going to throw the whole Big Sky Conference in there because I can't pick anybody. I mean, Northern Colorado lost a lot, but I know Smiley's trajectory as a coach.
You throw every team into a hat and you pick them out and you put that as your finish, and everyone will be like, oh, looks great.
Like, I have this really great gut feeling about Northern Arizona just from my excellent conversations with their head coach, Shane Burkhardt, this summer. But at the same time, like, they lost Carson Tout. They lost a couple other key pieces. He loves his team, so that word of mouth helps. Idaho is loved by all the analytics, but I'm not sold that they can play a lick of defense still. Montana probably is your most safe choice. Sean Paul loves Portland State, but I'm not seeing it with Portland State's offense. We'll see how that goes. I do love the coach there too, but like, I finished my top 60 and I could not convince myself to put any of these teams in the top 60. And that's the classic mid-major rankings below the American Conference. So the bottom 22 leagues is still a ton of teams. And I know for a fact, here's what I'll promise about the Big Sky. 2 of these teams will be in the top 60 by the end of the year. but I can't tell you which two.
Yeah, it's going to be absolutely wild to take a look at that. Like, man, it is incredible. And Rocco, I know that there's big things coming up at bracketeer.org. Anything that
Yeah.
we should be alerted for the next few days?
Oh, absolutely. So this coming week's actually a monster week. I'll be in probably about 7 or 8 states in 7 days. So look for coverage all over the place. X/Twitter is the best place to follow along at Rocco Miller 8. On Monday into Tuesday, I'll be in Atlanta with the Georgia State University program at their practice and doing some activities there. And then from there, by Wednesday, I will be in Greenville for the entire day doing SoCon Media Day with every SoCon head coach. I'll have an exclusive interview with the athletic director at Samford. Excuse me, I'm forgetting his first name, but last name Newton. He's the vice chairman of the selection committee. So that will be your first real taste from me of next year's bracketology, little sneak preview, and grilling Mr. Newton on what the decision process will be like and what it's like in the room. So it's always fun to talk to guys who are in the room, especially with a lot of influence like him. And then I'll also be interviewing the commissioner of the SoCon. So that'll be a great day on Wednesday. Thursday, I'm driving up to Appalachian State. Thank you to Coach Kern. They've been asking me to come out there for years. I'm finally doing it. Going to see Boone. That's a team I'm high on paper. We've had a lot of great conversations throughout the summer. I'll get my own 2 eyes on them. So before I put a final ranking out there, Greg, I'll get to see these Mountaineers. Into Friday, I'll make my way up to Jersey, where I'm going to be seeing both Fairleigh Dickinson and LIU. Little NEC treat, little outside looking in. And then I might hit a couple more spots from there. There's just so many schools up there. So follow along. A basket under review. We're going to turn like a bunch of 10-minute interviews at the SoCon into an entire podcast. So be sure to look for that on the Basket Under Review podcast. And then our mid-major show, once the season gets rolling, it's going to be every single Thursday at 5 Eastern. We're going to do a couple in October. Stay tuned for the dates. Also at the same time, 5 Eastern on a couple of the Thursdays. Based on our travel schedule and all that, we're working that out.
And some very underrated breweries out there as well in the Carolinas, where you're going to be next week. So there's going to be a lot of fun to be had from Rocco. He does such an amazing job taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. And every single time he joins me, lends such great insights just like today. So big thanks to Rocco for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. And if you do like what you're hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of 2 ways we'll fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, naming does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And I'm with you guys every single day, regular season and off season. We have just 4 conference previews left to do. The Big East, the Big 12, the Big 10, and the SEC. Those are going to be coming your way the next few weeks. We're going to do everything possible to get you set for what is going to be an incredible college basketball season. So that's why we're hard at work putting out all these podcasts before the season, because bets are won in season.
Warning, the following ZipRecruiter radio spot you are about to hear is going to be filled with F-words.
When you're hiring, we at ZipRecruiter know you can feel frustrated, forlorn even, like your efforts are futile, and you can spend a fortune trying to find fabulous people, only to get flooded with candidates who are just fine. Fortunately, ZipRecruiter figured out how to fix all that. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/zip. With ZipRecruiter, you can forget your frustrations because we find the right people for your roles fast, which is our absolute favorite F word. In fact, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day.
Fantastic.
So, whether you need to hire 4, 40, or 400 people, get ready to meet first-rate talent. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/zip to try ZipRecruiter for free. Don't forget, that's ZipRecruiter.com/zip. Finally, that's ZipRecruiter.com/zip.